Christina, are you ready for treasures? There she goes.
You hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. You guys see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So, travel treasures. Thank you for doing this job. It's a thankless job. But we appreciate it, Lisa and I do. Most of you should have received your checks from me in the mail today. If they didn't come today, it should arrive tomorrow. They were all mailed out yesterday. You also should have gotten an email from me that showed your status on whether you needed to go to the bank or not, or whether you already are on the same account that you were on last year. For those of you who do need to go to the bank, the one-time task to go to the bank, a specific bank at 103rd Michigan Road. And after that, you can make all of your deposits at any Fifth Third branch that's closest to you. As Lisa said, as far as communicating to us and communicating your team name and your color, when you're asking me about a specific banking question, it would be great if you could include the last four digits of your bank account number, because that's how I track you guys. And when I get into our accounting system or I'm making a transfer to your team, I'm working off of the last four digits of your bank account number, which is included in the mailing that you got from me today, or we'll get tomorrow. And that's critical for me to be able to answer your question quickly if I know your last four digits of your bank account number. So please try to include that when you communicate with me. When you're communicating with Lisa, you don't necessarily need to communicate that, but if it's a specific banking question, that's good information for me to have. So everybody got a letter with their checkbook that tells them their status 1, 2, or 3, and it tells you what your steps are based on your status. If you need to go to the bank to fill out and get signed on to a new account, you will go to the bank with your ID and they will fill out a form for you. They'll have you sign it, and then you will get mailed a debit card directly to your home. If you returned your checks, they're going to be mailed back. They were mailed back to you from me, and you got those today. You don't need to go to the bank. If you are a new treasurer that has not been on an account before, you will have to go to the bank. So please read those letters carefully and determine whether you're status 1, 2, or 3, and follow the instructions that are on those letters. Your online bank access, if you already have it from last year and you're on the same account and I'm mailing you back your checks, or you already have your checks and you kept them, your online bank access should be the same as it was. If it is not, please call the bank and they can reset it for you. But I talked to Keith Ritchie, which is our manager that handles all of our accounts, and he thinks that they should all be still active. So if you have issues with that, please let me know or call the bank branch and they can reset you. As Lisa said, that we are registering all of our teams for the different events that they're attending, and we're paying those fees ourselves. We're sending checks, putting in our debit card number from the club account, and over the next week, I will be generating invoices back to your teams. And when we generate those, you'll get those via email, and then we may or may not, depending on how that goes, upload those to TeamSnap. But watch your email. I will be updating the accounting system to add your email addresses to the accounting system. So treasurers will be the primary contact on that invoice, but managers will also be copied on it. So managers, if you get an email that says you've received an invoice, know that you're a carbon copy on that email, just to let you know that what we're invoicing your team for. Everything on that invoice should be included in your budget. But that's not all that's included in your budget. The invoice that you're receiving from me is just what we have paid for your team. It does not include events that you're going to have to travel for, that it includes the cost of those events that we paid for, but it doesn't include the coaches' expenses, and it doesn't include your referee fees for your league games. So you still need to go into what Lisa just showed you, the ISL website, and figure out what your game schedule is and calculate your referee fee. So please do not take my invoice as everything that needs to go on your budget. There's much more that needs to go on your budget that won't be on the invoice, because there's referee fees, there's coaches' expenses, there's mileage, there's food costs for your coaches' expenses. As far as collecting your team fees or setting your budget, we're going to give you a little more latitude this year because of the new system and the difficulties that we've all faced onboarded onto a new system. So no invoice from us is going to be due from the team until the end of September. September 30th will be the due date once I issue them. So that gives you a little bit of time to get your full schedule up, determine where your games are at, determine if any game is more than 100 miles round trip, which is our stop loss level. If a game is more than 100 miles round trip, then we will pay mileage and per diem to a coach, meaning per diem means breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Question on that.
We've currently registered all of your teams for everything that we have been given to the directors, but we may not have paid all of those yet because the due dates vary, especially for events that are in October. You may have registered your teams, but we have not actually paid those. We're going to be doing that over the next 7 to 10 days, and Lisa's going to be getting me those lists. And even if I haven't actually paid it, I will put it on your invoice so that you know that it's something we are going to pay. Basically, we are going to pay for any event you are registered for the fall season. You are going to pay for your referee fees and your coach's expenses for traveling to any games that's more than 100 miles away. And those can be league games, depending on your division. They can be league games or definitely any out-of-state tournaments that you are attending. The other thing that you should include in your budget, which I put on the template, which we've uploaded to your team staff, so just showed you that folder in the media file under files, manager documents. There are 2 documents. One is a PDF document that shows you a completed sample of how a budget should look. And the other one is an Excel file that shows you, it's a document that you can open up and complete your budget. This is actually from the wording on this is 2020, but it's the same basic concept. You'll put in your league, and you'll put in the cost of the league, and that's going to come off of the invoice that I gave you. And you're going to have a quantity of one, and we'll calculate that. And then off of the list that Lisa has provided you for the events that you're going to attend, if it's not on your invoice and Lisa has provided you that you're attending this event, that means that we haven't registered you for that or we haven't paid for that yet. But you still need to include that. And that's where Lisa was showing you how to go to the event website and look up the cost. So you just put it on your budget, even if it's on your invoice. It may be, if it's a late October tournament, it may fall on a separate invoice later because sometimes the deadlines or they don't even open them up until early September if it's a late October or early November event. So please read the information Lisa sends you on other events you may be attending, any IFJ events, we will definitely be included on your invoice. Any league events like ISL or Great Lakes Conference will be included on your invoice because we've already paid. And the next thing you will have on your budget will be the referee fees. And those are specific to only your league games. Tournament games are, you don't have to budget for referee fees. Tournament games are included in your registration fee for that tournament. But for league games, you need to calculate your ISL league games. And to do that, you have to have your schedule. And if you don't have your schedule, so on this example, this is 8 ISL league games at $46 a game. And that's actually 46 times 2 is the actual cost of the game, $92. But each team splits one half of the fees. So you're responsible for bringing one half of the fee. And you have 8 league games. If you have your schedule, and then each manager or treasurer should pull their coach and find out if they're going to do any friendly games. Because oftentimes, and especially in the fall season, when there's a little bit more available field space, the coaches will do a couple friendlies in addition to their league games. And those friendly games are paid at the same rate as the ISL league games. If you don't have your schedule yet and you want to do an estimated budget, Lisa showed you how to get to the ISL website. The other way to do this is to go to the ISL website and look at your play group. So this example is the 12U Third Blue group. And you can see by this list of teams that are in the play group, there are 8 teams in the play group. Okay, so that means that you are going to play 7 games in ISL in this play group. And you can find those links on the website that Lisa just showed you. And you can still do an estimated budget. I don't recommend that treasurers do this in the spring because we're close to the end of the season. But in the fall, it's okay to estimate. If you go in and you look at your play groups, okay, and you see boilers, and some of these you may not recognize, you may have to Google them to find out where they're at. But you can Google these names or go to the ISA website and find these clubs, as Lisa showed you, and they will show you exactly where they're located. And then you can Google whether that's 100 miles away or not, round trip. If it's 100 miles away, round trip, then you will have coaches expenses. Anything that's less than 100 miles round trip from Grand Park, which is the Grand Park address, which you can find on the Grand Park website, it's 19,000 Grand Park Boulevard. You will calculate mileage for your coach, and then you will have hotel expenses. Hotel expenses will have to be found on the league website or on the event website. This is said, IPSC website. Every website for an event has a hotel link, which will show you the available hotels. We're giving you a little bit more time to do this year. So if you want to wait until you have these events, that's fine. But for those of you who are doing late October or early November events, you really need to do your best guess now because you're going to be doing a fall budget. And if you're a little bit off in the fall and you need the club to cover some stuff, or if you have an overage and you collected too much money, you can adjust that in the spring season. And in the spring season, it's a little more time sensitive, but in the fall, if you want to go and look at your play group and try to figure this out before you actually have your schedule, this just applies to second, third, and fourth division teams. First division has their schedules out now, and you should have all the information to calculate your budgets. and you'll use the forms in your media folder to calculate those budgets. I'm not going to cover these last 3 or 4 slides in detail. They are a deep dive into all the questions that we get on coaching expenses. But I am going to send all of you this PowerPoint when we're done. And there's a lot of special circumstances when it comes to coaching expenses. If you have more than one coach going to an event and now, and there's 2 teams going from your group, which you can find out from your coach or from your coaching director. I would start with the coach, and he can pull the coaching director and find out if there are 2 or 3 teams going. And we require our coaches of the same gender to share a hotel room so that coaches teams can split that cost. There's no reason for the 08 girls red and white to go to the same event on the same weekend in St. Louis, and both teams pay for a separate hotel room for both coaches. They can share a room. But that information on who exactly is coaching your team at that event needs to come from your coach. But these last 2 or 3 pages of this document give you multiple scenarios that you might encounter when trying to calculate your coaching expenses. And when we're done, I'm going to email this video so that you have all the details. We have not updated it's been a rough July for Lisa and I with the new transition of that sport. So we are a bit behind. But I'm going to send this to all of our treasurers tomorrow morning when we're done. And it will give you a bird's eye view of everything you need to know, every possible scenario that I have ever encountered back when I was a manager and doing this for the last 20 years. Questions, frequently asked questions that I've been asked on how to calculate those questions. Player drops and additions between teams. Always a big issue for our older teams. Please read this when it comes in. Basically, what we try to do, there is not as much player movement in our travel program as there is in our youth program, but there is some. And there will be a situation where a player was on your roster when you did your budget, and then 10 days after that budget is done, that player gets moved to a different team. And it comes down to whether they paid your team or not paid your team. If they have not paid your team, it's an easy fix. They just pay the new team's team. If they've already paid your team, then it gets a lot more complicated because you've already done your budget based on 14 players. And now you have 13 players. And if they haven't paid their team fees, there's going to be an issue. So please take the time when you get this email tomorrow to read what the options are for doing that. The club has a slush fund to help cover these things. But the basic concept is that if a player moves to a team that has a higher fee and they've already paid the first team, they will pay the new team the difference between the fee, whatever the increased amount is. So if a player moves from white to red, and the difference between white and red is $95, that player must pay the red team the $95. And then between you, I, and the other treasurer, we will work out the difference. Whether that be that the team that, if the player moved from the white team to red team and the white team replaced that player with another team and got the full team fees, the white team should have a surplus in their budget and they should be able to send you the difference. If they weren't replaced, the club has a slush fund that we can help you cover those expenses. So timeline on fall budgets. The fall budgets invoices back to the club for stuff that Lisa and I have registered you for and paid for are not going to be due till the end of September. I normally set that for the first week in December, but with all the struggles with the transition, we're going to push that back a little bit. So you should have your invoices out to your teams, knowing that you need to pay a bill back to the club by the end of September. I recommend that you try to have that out by right after Labor Day. That gives them 2 or 3 weeks to get the money to you and for you to get it in the bank and get a check mailed out in time. Past due team fees. Once you send your invoices out to your team and you give them a deadline to pay, if they have not paid it by the day before it's due, you need to contact them. I would start with via email. If they don't respond within a day or two, 3 days at their max, pick up the phone and call them and ask them if there's an issue. It may just be that they're not reading their email. If you get them on the phone, then give them a deadline to drop off a check at training or mail it to you by X date. If they miss that deadline, please do not wait until I send you a past due invoice. Don't not pay your club invoice because you have 1 or 2 players that are past due. Please reach out to Lisa and I and let us know that you have a player that has not paid, is not responding to you, not answering your voicemails. And we have steps that we can take on the club side to get those funds collected for you and transfer them to your team account. But if you wait until after your invoice is due, it gets a lot more complicated. So as soon as you realize that you have a player that is not responding to you and not bringing the check when you gave them the deadline, please let us know as soon as you know you have a problem with a team fee that's not being collected on time. Like I said, I'm not going to cover 7, 8, and 9 in detail because those are the ones that you need to read in detail, and reach out to me and ask me questions as you get in, as you talk to your coaches and pull your coaches on events and who's traveling to where. You're all going to have unique situations, and those are things that we need to deal with via email. Email me, let me know that you've got a specific situation if it's not addressed in these slides, and I can help you work through that. I can work with your coach, Lisa, and I will both do that to help you resolve any of those issues. And again, you can find these documents in your media folder that Lisa showed you. Completed sample and a blank one. If you want me to review your budget, please save your budget, save the Excel file to your desktop as your team name and the fall 2021 budget, and email it to me, and I will give it a second look to make sure that you aren't missing anything or there's nothing that you have failed to include. The number of players on your team roster when you're doing your budget is very important. And with the new Got Sports system and us using TeamSnap to communicate that number, if you were to get a message from your coach that they're going to add another player or something that is not reflected in TeamSnap, please contact us. We will track that down with the DOCs. But my standard language is if you're in doubt, -1. So if you think you have 14 and you're in doubt, especially in the fall season, because you think there might be a player that's dropping, or you've had a parent call you and tell you that Johnny sprained his ankle last week and he might be out for the rest of the season, it's always better to divide by 1 less than you actually think you have. Because this is the fall season. We can adjust this in the spring season and parents won't end up paying any more money. if we're wrong, that you won't end up in a situation where you're short on your budget in the fall season. We can adjust those things in the spring season once we figure out whether Johnny's ankle's actually sprained or not. So that's my advice on your budget. And feel free to reach out to me anytime you need help. The best way to reach me, my phone's pretty busy. Best way to reach me is email, but feel free to call me if I don't respond to your email in a timely manner. Once we get into our event season, I get a little bit busy with helping with events. But if I don't respond to you, call me and leave me a voicemail, because each year we have new treasurers come on board. And when you call me and you leave me a voicemail and I call you back, then I'll save your number and I'll put your name and I'll put Penny or Jennifer and I'll know who you are. But that first phone call I may not answer. So please don't just hang up and not leave me a voicemail, because then I'm just going to think you're a spam call. Leave me a voicemail. And when I listen to your voicemail, I will save your number and I will save your name and what team you're with, so that when you call me back the next time, I'll know who you are.
And please always feel free to reach out to us. You know, no question is too small. But we also, I mean, I always say this, please, you know, don't spend a half an hour trying to figure out how to print off your player cards, or don't spend, you know, 20 minutes, you know, racking your brain as to, you know,
Trying to figure out
Lisa showed us and got.
Yeah.
We don't want this to be, tedious and a job. So
don't feel afraid to reach out to us. We're both busy, but you are our most important assets. There's absolutely no way Lisa and I could do what I do. Lisa and I could do what we do without you guys. So don't feel like we're too busy to answer your questions. Reach out to us, and if one of us, Lisa knows when I'm buried, I know when Lisa's buried, and we cover for each other. So if don't ever feel like we're too busy to help.
okay. I know there are a couple, maybe just one fall manager or treasurer on this, and Jennifer Yoder is. The fall teams have not been kind of completely finalized. We're still in kind of that limbo of who's playing high school, who's not playing high school, some of those things. So those documents for those teams, actually even their ISL registrations, are not yet complete. So those things will be added a little later as we kind of finalize those, how many teams we need, and then exactly what events they'll be doing. Okay. One last thing, because I can't remember whether I showed you guys or whether it was the group before, but as you're working in the rosters in TeamSnap, if you need to add or delete anybody here, please don't do that. Please let me do that. Simply because, you know, if you find out Johnny has broken his arm and he's not playing for the rest of the year, there are lots of other things on the back end that we need to do with their registration and with their payments and all that kind of stuff. So if there is an add or delete, please just send me an email and let me know. And also, if you're sending an email to info@indianafireJuniors.com, there are a couple of us, Christina and I are the main ones who check that email as well. So we would be able to both catch those questions if anything comes through that. Again, info@indianafireJuniors.com. So from the chat, it looks like I think we were able to get most everything. Anything come up from anybody that you want to unmute and ask us? It's your time. Great.
Okay.
Well, looking forward to. Go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say, if you have any questions, I know you will. There was silence right now because we were overwhelming you with information, but feel free to, tomorrow morning when you digest this and you get the emails from us, feel free to email us and ask your questions.
Additionally, just want to say that I know the first session and this session ran together via Zoom instead of us kind of stopping one and starting another. So the recording will probably be absolutely humongous and with both sessions. So we'll probably record Saturdays and hopefully get them split into and be able to post those online as well. So if you need any review or if anybody asks you, hey, what was discussed, we will try to get those recordings up. So again, thank you all very much and enjoy your season.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Appreciate it. Thanks.